everyone. How are you doing this afternoon? I'm so happy to be with you this afternoon. My name is Katerina Stojkova. I have the incredible honor of serving as the director of the Kentucky Book Festival. And now, thank you. Now I'm very happy to ask to come to the mic my personal friend, incredible poet, Afro-Latin poet, fiction writer, legendary MC, and incredibly wonderful human being, Jude McPherson.
She's so kind. How are you all doing? Come on, how are you all doing? Thank you. Katerina, you do incredible work. Everybody knows that. Ever since you touched down in Lexington, you have changed this whole literary scene, so thank you for everything that you do. To the poets, you can read one poem only. Do not try to read two poems. I will take the microphone from you. I am bigger than you. All right. First up, does this man even need introductions anymore? New York Times best-selling author of 6 novels, got a book of creative nonfiction. Lark Ascending follows Lark and his impromptu family of fellow refugees as they struggle to find a haven in a near future world of widespread ecological, political, and civil dangers. I'm honored I can call this person a friend of mine. Give it up, Silas House.
Thank you, Jude. Proud to know you. I have to bring this huge magazine. It's so big. But my most recent poem is in it, The Bitter Southerner. So buy it for Jason Isbell and then read my poem. This poem is called Cumberland Falls. I grew up near Cumberland Falls. I hope all of you have been there. If you haven't, you should see it. And it's about being an LGBT person in a rural place and how a wild space can be a safe space. So, Cumberland Falls, and it starts with a quote from one of my favorite poets, Gerard Manley Hopkins. Oh, let them be. Cumberland Falls. In high school, the biggest dare was to slink over the slick rocks flanking Cumberland Falls, where the wide but shallow river dives 70 feet into a deep pool of froth. There, people say, catfish big as men twist and slither, awaiting suppers sped their way. You can see a rainbow at night, shimmering on the mist during a full moon and a clear sky. This is true. I snuck behind the green curtain once with my best friend, whose name I won't say because he never came out. Just as we reached the veil of water where we would disappear into another world, I slipped. My right leg slid down the cold boulder, and before I could plunge into the churning chaos where torrent met river, he grabbed hold of my hand. I was so electrified by his touch, I didn't think of how close I was to being swept away. Instead, I thought how a small moment of ecstasy is akin to drowning. He held on for a beat longer than necessary. The roar behind the falls was a deafening symphony heard only by those brave enough to penetrate this darksome cavern carved by centuries fern-laden, alive with the smell of moss, a secret cathedral made of wildness and wet. We were mesmerized and stood watching the cascade as if frozen, yet as if we might see through to the other side. Thank you.
Thank you. How is everybody? How is everybody? Is it so hard just to do it the first time? If my memory has not betrayed me, me and this next reader were actually the co-features for the very first Holler Poet Series reading. A former Guggenheim Fellow, Maurice Manning, teaches at Transy. Snake Doctor is rooted in Kentucky culture, history, and geography. His fourth book, The Common Man, was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. His first book, Lawrence Booth's Book of Visions, was selected by W.S. Merwin for the Yale Series of Younger Poets. Give it up for Maurice Manning.
Jude, your memory has not betrayed you yet. Good to see everybody. Thank you for supporting poetry and literature in this region. The gospel of music. You have to thank the great beyond if your child delights in birdsong, especially a chorus of it, a dizzy crowd of birds singing, warbles, chits, and caws ringing through the sanctuary of the woods. Although I heard the birds myself, it was the little one who pointed her finger to the budding trees and pronounced the word she has for music, composed of a pair of syllables, both beginning vaguely with Y, with emphasis rightly on the first. It happens also to be the word she has for donkey and the plural of donkey. And it's also the word she says regarding the photograph of an old-time banjo player she sees at supper time. She sees the sound of a silent instrument, and that's the true gospel of music. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was music and birds and donkeys, and God was a serious banjo player with an inscrutable face who said to everything alive, I made the world for singing. Now, you sing.
And just like the wind, he disappears. Thank you, sir. I'm not going to ask y'all this time. Let's see here. What? Thank you. Doing great. Let's see. This next poet didn't believe that we met before. So, she's the past chair of the AWP board from 2019 to 2022, professor of creative writing, and chair of the Naslin Mann Graduate School of Writing at Spalding. The poems in the Vine Temple meditate on light and darkness in the natural world. Give it up. I've met her before, I promise, Kathleen Driscoll.
I didn't say it like that. So I'm going to read the last poem in the Vine Temple. And this is a poem that was published in the New Yorker in this past year. So I want to read it for you all. Poem for grown children. In a poem I love, the husband slices open a pepper to find a church. But here at the sink I found a house, and inside the rattling seeds of a chandelier. It doesn't matter. My husband is too by himself in the hospital, and in our home at the window I stand, alone for the first time in almost 30 years. Then he'd rushed out into the dark, summoned to his father's deathbed. But I wasn't really alone. My toddler son slept, his mouth slightly open and red and wet inside like a fledgling's. My daughter grew within me, close as a locket on a chain. When my husband returned, I remember he talked of the rattle, the death rattle. The children are now inside their own homes, asleep, curled around their own beloveds, but all so young yet. They do not think we will ever die. In their garden beds, if they are dreaming of seeds and light, they are dreaming of little blazes growing hotter. They are not dreaming of wind and flickering, and certainly they are not dreaming of smoke. Thank you.
Yay! How are you all doing? For over a decade, this person served as a crisis office volunteer as well as a hospital and legal advocate for a battered women's shelter. Why does everybody's life sound more interesting than mine? I do not know. Daybreak and Deep is a rich and graceful assembly of requiems for family and home places for a spouse. She honors and abandons the innocence of childhood and the prescribed gender roles imbued with religion and tradition. Give it up for Jessica D. Thompson.
Thank you so much. It's quite an honor to be here. I'm actually going to read the last poem in my collection, Daybreak and Deep, and it is called Tall Grass. In the history of the Great Plains, women went insane with prairie madness. The incessant wind, the never-ending grief of grass. But I have learned to sleep in meadows where fireflies lay eggs, then die, and the wind blows through the tall grass of my body. My limbs are made of crowfoot, backbone, foxtail, millet, my hair, one long braid of curly dock. Sedge grass takes root in the marrow of my bones, and my breast weep with the sap of milkweed. On the day the earth takes me back, my spirit will rise like the wild cane that grows on the banks of a narrow stream. Thank you.
I used to work here. Why was that funny? I'm capable of holding down a job. Let's see. But for real, if y'all need somebody to jump on a register, I got you. Let's see. Our next poet is a native Virginian, a poet, musician, and photographer. Her first book, This Gone Place, won the 2010 ASA Weatherford Award. Her second book, The Parting Glass, won the 2021 Arthur Smith Poetry Prize. Give it up for Lisa Parker.
Thank you. I'm going to read from a poem from The Parting Glass, my second book. I joke that I spent 20 years living in Manhattan in between 2001 and 2003. Not great timing to move to the city. I wrote a series of poems called Hillbilly Transplant, and this one is called Hillbilly Transplant Working at the Metropolitan Opera. First month, I run my hands against those burgundy crushed velvet walls lined with portraits of Caruso and Callis. Swoon when Placido Domingo holds the elevator for me, and again when I hear the early rehearsal for La Boheme through the old RCA speaker perched on a shelf in my office. Second month, I invent errands to run, lose myself to the maze of hallways beneath the stage. Something akin to Alice in Wonderland, each hall is shorter than the next, the ceiling lower and lower until the giant coffin-sized case of a symphony bass has to stand at a pitch, propped sideways against a piano just to fit. Each hall lined with racks of costumes seems stranger than the next. Verdi-inspired props, a huge bird costume from The Marriage of Figaro. Ballerinas from the Bolshoi scatter at my footfall, exit a side room toward me, a billow of contraband smoke rushing out from behind them. They wear heated slippers, leg warmers that accentuate their heart-shaped calves. Third month, I ponder the $7 cafeteria clamshell of mostly arugula and tiny scoop of tuna. Wonder how close I am to maxing out that last card. How much we could save in rent if we called the walled-off part of our living room a bedroom. Sell some other artist the dream of living on Broadway. Neglect to mention the subway directly under us or the projects on Amsterdam on the other side of the block. Finish tuna while listening to stagehands and set designers talk union politics. Make grocery list, wonder how far $40 will stretch. Wonder how many bags I can carry the 6 blocks from Gristides back to the apartment. Wonder if it will rain on me. Fourth month, tally 2-year debt. Take lunch in my office. Skip cafeteria, skip courtyard performance of Juilliard musicians. Turn dial of my RCA speaker to off when the soft mandolin of Don Giovanni leaves me hand over mouth crying. A barrage of homesick images, family reunions, great uncles plucking mandolins cradled on their broad chests, picking guitars, banjos, everyone foundering in lawn chairs in that pressing Virginia heat, pregnant always with rain and threat of storm. No amount of staring out the floor to ceiling windows at the Grand Fountain or City Ballet in Lincoln Square can disenthrone those faces or voices singing mountain ballads, hymns, and Stanley Brothers standards, sweaty hands clasped, voices perfectly imperfect, soul-savingly beautiful, my heart's familiar redemption. I know as sure as I've known anything here that I will leave this city and its grandeur, return south, settle in a tree-laden space with mountains around me, and no doubt dream of crushed velvet walls and halls filled with bel canto runs and ballerinas. Thank you.
Thank you. How is everyone? Let's see. Frank X. Walker is the first African-American writer to be named Kentucky Poet Laureate. Well, see, what happened with that is they called me. I had a toothache. I had to go to the dentist, so it didn't work out. So they called Frank. But for real, I've known this man for a very, very long time. He's more like a big brother to me than anything, and he's a reason why I'm an Afro-Latin poet. If you haven't read his work, start with Afro-Latin and then just go from there. Give it up for Kentucky writing legend, Frank Walker.
Toothache, right. I'm reading from Love House, just came out last week, so I guess I should read a love poem. This is a love sonnet. But this is a love poem for parents who have young children. You already know how this goes. Neoteric, comma, no sutra. When pheromones ignited by the promise in her come and get it smile, our kinetic skin and my hunger sing to our son about how he got here and why it all started. He finds a way to prove umbilical cords are longer than desire. He cries, I just want you. And everything planned or selfish and hard in her melts and is put on hold. Something in the ether, in the dark or in our eyes, warns my mini me that another hymn could be made in this moment. He remembers he does not share, wedges his head into our groove, almost reprising his birth. Like a wrestler needing to break a figure four, leg lock, or spill the milk and water embrace, he forces a submission, but we are patient and wait. Thank you.
I taught him everything he forgot. Kentucky Poet Laureate for 2019-2020. Jeff Worley is the author of 7 books of poetry. The Poet Laureate of Aurora Avenue is a collection of poems culled from the author's previous 6 books, several of which are out of print. So buy it. All right? Give it up, Jeff Worley.
I love being surrounded by poets like this. Let's just get a couple of kegs of beer and wine and just stay here for about, I don't know, 3 weeks and see how many of us survive that. Oh, there you are. You've asked us, how you're doing. Well, how are you doing? Louder? Is that loud enough? Okay. I happen to notice your coat and your hat, so I have to ask you, is Joey Votto coming back next year? Okay. I'm going to be reading from my latest book, which is a selected poems, and basically it's a best of, and I hope so. And somebody, an old friend, came by today when I was downstairs and said, you're going to read today, aren't you? And I said, yes. And how many poems? And I said, I don't know, probably just 2 or 3. And came up here and I asked Katerina, how many poems can we read? 1. You can read 1. Not 2? No, just 1. Okay, so I'll read this tribute I have to Ezra Pound. It's in 5 dead languages, and it's 12,007 lines long, okay? So, fasten your seatbelts. Well, I haven't written that yet. Never mind. Instead, I will read what someone else came by and asked me to read. Would you read the one about the armadillo? Well, I don't have one about an armadillo, but I have one about a possum. And this was probably my wife's favorite poem because she stars in this with me, or with characters like us, I should say. And this is a poem titled Playing Possum. Something was gnawing at my dream, and awake now, I hear one of our cats loudly crunching at his bowl in the kitchen. But here in bed, I make out the shapes of all three cats, a triumvirate around my wife and me. I leap up through the question of, something wrong, honey? And stumble toward the mad chewing. I flick on the light. There, in the corner, pink as a piglet, a baby possum startles from the bowl of kitten caboodle, crumbs flaking around its tiny gash of mouth. And here's Linda, fully awake now too, with not only a broom for her, but one for me. She flings me mine like Ricky Nelson tossing John Wayne his loop-handled carbine in Rio Bravo. And we're shutting doors behind us and opening doors to the outside world, which clearly terrifies this arboreal rodent whose little more than whiplash tail and provisional hiss. He scampers under the German shrunk. I take a couple swipes underneath and tease out a dust-covered catnip toy, a disposable Bic, and half of what looks to be a slice of Donato's pepperoni. The possum folds into itself like a fist. But Linda is choking up and waving her broom ready, so I thwack the thing broadside. It skids out like a top-ended puck to my wife, who swings, her breasts lovely in the sudden light. Did I mention we're both bone naked? And I'm skating toward the wide-open front door, this 2 a.m. game of possum broom ball, almost fun now, and whoosh the critter so hard it cartwheels like a cartoon possum through a racket of katydids and other night fiddlers, and lands like a wad of flubber on the lawn. As it scampers off, Linda and I stand on the front porch, victorious, holding our brooms in the manner of American Gothic. Our next door neighbor, Jamie, home from the late shift, turns her blue Toyota into the drive, fixing us with headlights. It's scary how seriously these Worleys take their house cleaning, she may be saying to herself, at which point there's nothing left for us to do but wave. Thank you all. Thank you. I have books for sale, as a lot of us do. Thanks again.
They need Joey Votto to come back to be just in a locker room to hold the team together. In Cincinnati, if they were smart, they would do that. But this is Cincinnati, so now he's gone. Let's see. There's some voices that I get excited about because they're just on this trajectory with their words and their creativity. And this is the way I feel about this next reader. A lifelong Kentuckian who has used the alchemy of arts and activism for over 25 years. The poems in Black Girl at the Intersection speak from the intersection of social justice and personal heartbreak. Please give it up for LaTanya Jones.
Hello. I'm going to be reading to you today from my first book, the first collection. It's called Black Girl at the Intersection. And I also have to say that it is amazing to be a part of this community and that many of the poems that were written came from prompts that were given to me by the same people who are in this room. This is called Prompt, which the first stanza actually was a quote from my first poetry teacher, Letha Kendrick, who's right there. Prompt. Write the image you see, Use the word that comes next. Follow that word with another word and another word until there are no more words, until you can no longer find another single word. I see a black man's face. I see a black man's face smashed into the pavement. This time, his name is George. I see George's black face smashed into the pavement, and his face takes me back to my cousin's black face and what my cousin's black face must have looked like when they forced him off the cliff. I see white-faced rage lashing against his black back. I see uniformed cop with his knee in his black neck. I see my cousin's black baby face smiling back at my own black baby face. My eyes haven't fallen upon his black face since we were 19. Write the image you see. Use the word that comes next. Follow that word with another word and another word until there are no more words, until you can no longer find another single word. I see a gray casket. I see a gray casket filled with a black body. This time, it is Eric's black body. I see Eric's black body in a gray casket. This is Eric Richardson, not Eric Garner. Eric Richardson died before Eric Garner. I see Eric Richardson's son seated on the first pew of the church. I hear Eric Garner's daughter cry out from behind a megaphone. I see me. I see me stand. I see me stand above Eric's casket. I see me sob and try to find words. I see me try to find words to lay to rest another cousin, another black body. Eric Richardson, not Eric Garner. I do not know Eric Garner. Eric Richardson died before Eric Garner. I see Eric's mother tremble in grief. I see people fan her face to give her air. I see Eric's child. I see Eric's children's pain. I do know Eric Garner. I see Eric Garner's black body smashed against the pavement. I touch Eric Richardson's black body. He is cold as ice. I feel this cold as familiar. I have seen too much, touched too many black bodies. Prompt, write what it's like to try to hang on to your black mind when there are so many black futures in the ground. Thank you.
This is a really nice podium. Isn't this a nice podium? Can I have this podium? I can't have this one. All right. Let's see. How are you all doing today? Fell off a little bit right there. I'm going to let you slide. Let's see. A member of Bluegrass Writer Studio and Berea Writer Circle, she currently co-directs Coming of Age, a writing program for Kentucky women over 55. This collection includes poems appearing in 2 previous chapbooks, as well as poems published in a variety of journals and anthologies over the past 3 decades. Show love for Libby Falk Jones.
Thank you, Michael Wright. Yeah, what a great crowd coming out for poetry the last thing in the afternoon. Super. It's really a delight to be here and to hear the words of fellow and sister poets and writers in general. The poem I'll read was born during the pandemic. It's a sestina, which means you will hear 6 words repeated through the poem. The pattern is set. A sestina is a poem of discovery. You have those words, but you don't know how else meaning is going to be made from them. Dark winter. Their tongue a titter, chickadees. Tea kettles steam quilts air, her eyebrows arch. The twitter of snow, flakes on the window pane, snow a chilled tongue of grief, twitter of dis-ease. No black and white chickadees, notes penetrate, arch guiltily under the quilt of troubled dreams. To quilt is to make art, make blocks cascade like snow seals Arctic ice blocks, arch of igloo door an impenetrable tongue. Hush, hush, little chickadees, she croons, as the last logs twitter in the wood stove, fritter, smoosh, twitter, like lovebirds long familiar under bedquilt. Fricassee, wait and see, who is he, chickadees? Who can tell ever the meaning of snow in any tongue, especially ours, so bare, so thin? Under hearth arch, a cat sleeps orange, twitches with dreams of his arch rival, black, bitter, sleek. Paws a twitter, tongue silent, claws stretched across the quilt her grandmother pieced. Snow cluttering the empty bird feeder, chickadees so soon gone. She to follow those chickadees, echo that call through the arch of eternity. Who will carry her through snow? Whose soothing twitter lay her to rest beneath the quilt her grandmother sold her coat to finish? Who will sound her tongue? Snow softens frozen memories, chickadees' tongues, leaves language to arch, to astonish, its twitter smooth as a quilt. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, let's see here. Norman Minnick is the author of several collections of poetry and the editor of The Lost Etheridge, Uncollected Poems of Etheridge Night, which I cannot wait to read because Etheridge Night is one of the poets who really influenced me when I was started out in this game. This book features over 300 poems by the award-winning Black Arts Movement poet Etheridge Knight, so please give it up for Norman Minnick.
You saved a lot of the preamble. So, yes, I'm here as an editor. So this is the Uncollected Poems of Etheridge Knight. If you're not familiar with Etheridge, I'll just tell you real briefly. There's a lot to say, but he was a leading figure of the Black Arts Movement. Started writing poems while he was incarcerated in the mid-'60s. And this collection collects all the poems he started writing from prison all the way up to his death in 1991. I forgot I'm old now. I have to get the readers. And so I thought I would choose a poem called "Oh Elizabeth" because I just went to see this woman, Elizabeth, who was the woman who was holding him when he died. And she just turned 85 about 2 weeks ago. And she's a poet in her own right. So this is called "Oh Elizabeth." Woman of my wanderings, wife of my comings and goings, sister of my rap and rhyme, I thank thee, good giver, for the gift of time and tenderness. You bless my 58th year, though I be here in this domain of death, and excellent pain I languish. I suffer, I exalt. Do you still love me? Is my smoke still in your fire? How can you love me? Me, liar, cheater, and dirty mistreater. I love you, I, man of the high step and the long laugh. Despite the rocks and shoals and silver waterfalls, our rivers flow together. Who knows what the weather will be tomorrow? We row for sunshine, not storm. We row for joy, not sorrow. Thank you.
Silas always dresses so nicely, doesn't he? Oh, let's see. Y'all have big plans for the rest of the weekend? I'm just trying to see if something's going on. All right. Let's see. This person's the author of 4 chapbooks and 1 full-length collection, a songwriter, teacher, and poet from Wilder, Kentucky. An asking price, questions are key to examining humanity's relationship to the planet we live on. Roberta Schultz, will you join us here on the mic?
Thank you. It's great to be here. A friend of mine likes to share poems on Facebook, and one time she shared a poem by Maggie Smith that was a poem begun with a line from Basho, and I thought, I want to do that, so I did. Poem begun with a line from Basho. A cicada shell, it sang itself utterly away. Is that what they'll say when I plunge to earth, wings stopped in mid-flight? It's true. I've labored in the dark for years, found my way out of tunnels in the mud, left behind so many husks. They crackle underfoot of the ones who never wait their turn, who rush toward the front, making the loudest sounds. A patient hawk hides in the pine, with eye and ear attuned to shrieks for solo fame. One swoop swallows standouts in flash of talon and beak, while those who sing in the chorus drone on, fall back to earth intact, sung out, echoed in code by fellow insects, scavenged aloft as holy on lacquered beetle backs. Thank you.
The Harry Potter books came out when I was working here. I hate Harry Potter. I just had a flashback to like a Harry Potter party, and goodness. Hogwarts can go to, anyway, let's see. This next writer graduated from Berea College with an undergraduate degree in English composition and a minor in music performance. Wow, all right. Grenadine and Other Love Affairs is her first book of poetry. Man, that's just a good name. Wow, gotta underline that, that's just a good name. All right. The quest to make sense of oneself and the world, to excavate ever deeper layers of meaning. Nice bio. Give it up, Carolyn Grace.
It is a thrill to be here. I will be reading from Grenadine and Other Love Affairs. Thank you for that. I have sections in this book that are called Lyric Glossary. And so within those, I write inside of definitions. The definition I'm going to be reading today is exsanguinated, and it is from the section that is Grenadine. Exsanguinated, noun, 1. The action or process of draining or losing blood. The doctor said that I was anemic, and on my way home, I stopped at the grocery store and bought a bottle of Grenadine. I don't know why, just corn syrup and red dye and glass, but it caught the light and I liked the color, so I set it on the windowsill in the kitchen. When you came home the next day and told me you had lost your job, I wrapped myself around you and said it would be okay. I juggled bills while you spent weeks on the couch, alternating between depression and rage. I edited your resume, drafted your cover letters. I bought a bottle of raspberry syrup. I put it next to the Grenadine. Sometimes you yelled at me, but I thought it would pass when you got a new job. I forgot to take iron supplements for my anemia, or maybe I chose not to. I bought 3 bottles of cherry cough syrup and I hid them in the linen closet. You did get a job, finally, but you hated it so much that it made you hate me. I started buying cranberry juice and hiding it in the garage. I could not stop loving you, so I stopped loving myself. I could not stop wanting you, so I stopped wanting myself. Bottles of red liquid in the pantry under the sink. Bottles of cerise sugar behind the sofa, inside the washer, beneath the guest room bed. I worked harder, stepped lightly, said little, slept less. One afternoon before you got home from work, I was putting away groceries. My hand shook and a bottle of grenadine slipped through my fingers and shattered on the floor. Glass nicked my cheek and blood dripped onto my blouse. I stared at the mess, and as though in a trance, I moved through the house. I broke every bottle. I spilled every drop of artificial sweetener and red 40, let it congeal on the floor, let it pour into air vents, let it stain fabric and paper and the white of the walls. When the whole house dripped crimson, I left. I drove for 6 days, and on the 7th day, I rested, and I ate a pomegranate straight from the rind, the first I had tasted in years.
How's it going? Hey, who's left-handed? Just raise your hand if you're left-handed. All right. Just checking. Those are my people, so I got. Let's see here. Y'all doing all right? Oh, come on. Feed these poets. Next up. Born in New York City in 1943. Lived in San Francisco twice, graduating from Bard College. Moved to Kentucky in 1966, where members of his family had been living since 1846. Damn. Going through it from Broadstone Books, his 40th book publication celebrates his 80th birthday. Jonathan Green, everybody.
It was my 80th birthday and my 40th book. And I'm reading a poem that, this is my version of it. It's not, it was written by a Peruvian, Cesar Vallejo. It was written in November 10th, 1937. And he was living exiled in Paris and died a few months later, pretty much of starvation. A truly starving poet. And I guess because it has to do with war, I thought it was appropriate. It's masses. The battle over, the soldier dead, one came forward, implored him, "Don't die, I love you so." But the corpse, sad as it was, went on dying. Then another joined him, and both of them begged, "Come back to us, brother, do not leave us forever." But the corpse did not know how to stop his dying. Then 20 others joined them, then 100, 1,000, 500,000, now shouting, "So much love, can't we defeat this enemy, death?" But the corpse, as before, kept on dying. Then millions came forth, a choir crying, "Come back to us, don't leave us forever." But the corpse could only do as before and kept dying. Then, when all those left on earth gathered with everyone else, the corpse slowly looked up, deeply moved, began to sit up, put his arms around those closest, started to walk.
$80 old, 40 books. All right. I know, for real. Hell, I wrote 2 and I was done. Let's see. I think this may be the last reader. I don't, there's 2? Really? Okay. All right, I'm rolling. Let's see. Willie Edward Taylor Carver Jr. holds degrees in French and English from Morehead State University, where he focuses studies on advocacy for students and gay poems for red states. Great title. Great title. Carver counters the injustice of a persistent anti-LGBTQ plus movement by asserting that a life full of beauty and pride is possible for everyone. Give it up, Willie Edward Taylor Carver Jr.
Thank you. I thought for sure you were going to make fun of how many names I had. I deserve that. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. Thank you all so much. And, you know, about an hour ago, a little girl named Quinn, who somehow couldn't sit through a 1-hour poetry reading, she's 6 and a half and 3/4 years old, insisted that her mother buy her a copy of this book. And as I was inscribing it to her, she told me a story that she had written about an elf who fell in love with a witch, and they tried, this is her right here in the pink hair bows, about an elf who tried to marry a witch, and they had to make their way home despite some crows that didn't want them to make it there. About a week ago, Boyle County Schools banned over 100 LGBTQ and women's titles. And as I was inscribing that book to her, I thought about little girls like her, that they should be able to know that they live in a world where they can tell stories that they're allowed to share. That they should be able to grow up in a world where they can hear the stories that they want to hear. And who the hell are any of us to prevent her from having access to that? So, thank you. So this poem is for Quinn and every other person in the American school system right now. It's called Supermodel. You better work. When I was in 7th grade, I saw RuPaul donning red dress, scarlet gloves, carmine lips, so that she could methodically and rhythmically chant, "You better work," with electromagnetic notes that compelled me to release the energy of the words with every part of my body. My quick-speaking Appalachian mouth could not contain the tempo as it beat drums against the back of my teeth and stretched the rhythm into my bottom lip. I'm sure my 7th grade English teacher was loudly rolling the library full of eyes, carefully punctuated and alphabetically shelved in her tenured brain, when the 700th "You better work" flung itself on rainbow-cadenced musical wings from my mouth to boomerang across the classroom, knocking over journals, thrashing against posters, and tapping the musty-paned windows of the classroom on its quest to freedom. You keep singing. Let's just hope singing is all you share with RuPaul. It was attempted murder by semicolon. My lips held each other and wrapped around my teeth like a weighted blanket. The 700 winged lyrics already swarming the classroom, however, buzzing with ionized carols above our heads, were unmurderable. And united, They burst through the window and declared themselves free. And what the teacher couldn't stop was that I saw it happen and caught sight of the colors outside. Thank you.
Oh, Katarina's walking toward me. Ah! Ah! Just real quick, thank you all. Because, no, seriously, listening to you all helped me break through a problem I've been having with some writing for like 5 years now. So, thank you. I guess you want me to go ahead.
Thank you, Jude. And thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you to the incredible team of the Kentucky Humanities. And thank you to the wonderful team of Joseph Bed and the generous volunteers who have worked so hard the last several days. And thank you to Julie Clear, the unsung hero of the whole production. Yes, yes. And thank you for everybody who came and attended an event. Thank you for all the writers. Thank you for everybody who listened and who spent time and heart. Thank you to everyone who bought books to support our writers and our event. And well, I am part of the Kentucky Humanities team, so I thanked myself at the very beginning. Thank you. And I think we have had a wonderful festival, and I hope you join us for next year for the 43rd edition of the Kentucky Book Festival. Thank you.